The agenda should be on the screen.
It is,
All right, over to you, Mayor Kane.
and we are live. Yes,
We
I
are
see
live.
the light. I see the icon. Thank you. So, thanks everyone. We'll call the meeting together. I've got 102. Are there any additions to the agenda? I don't hear any. I'd like a confirmation for the agenda then, please. We need a mover and a seconder. Larry moved. Scott, will you second then?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna have to do our continuous roll calls again because of our screen issue. So all in favor, Scott,
Yay.
Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry,
Yay.
Bill, yay. Motion is carried. Thank you. I would ask for any declarations of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. We'll record that there were none. Section 5 is our public question period. This is, has been set up for obviously when we're performing live meetings, but we're going to try to see what we can do with this. We do have a 10-minute limit normally, which we may have to do something about today, but I would ask if our clerk or deputy clerk, have we received questions?
Mayor Kane, we haven't received any submissions in writing.
Okay. Thank you. So
There may be a request
Yes.
through this meeting.
Yes, okay, thank you.
You're
So we
welcome.
have been taking written submissions, but we're on Zoom and we do have members of the public who are joining us today. So I will give this a minute or two for you to sort this through and see if you can, if you have a question that you could bring it forward, please. The floor is open. So I hear none. I have on my participant sheet, it says we have 12 attendees. I don't know how many of those are members of the public, but I'm hearing no questions. So hearing none, we'll move on with our agenda, please. So all I have up, Emily, is 5.0 question period. We need to go back to the regular agenda. Thank you. I'm still on section 5, so if we could scroll back, there we go. Thank you very much. So part 6, presentations and delegations. We have Gary Scallon back, the managing partner and director of municipal finance from Watson's Associates, REAR Water Rate Study. So the 2020 Water Rate Study Council meeting of today. This has been revised. I would turn this over to you, Arthur, or to Gary directly.
I'll just give a very short introduction, but turn it over to Gary almost instantly. Gary has presented to us on 2 previous occasions at the public meeting as well as the committee of the whole meeting. Very familiar with him. We've invited him back to be able to provide answers to questions related to the options that were prepared. And so I'll just turn it over to him to allow us to do his presentation and answer questions council may have.
So if you're with us, Gary, it's all yours.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, I was just going to, I wasn't sure whether you had the presentation or whether you wanted me to pull it up, but I can, if you just give me a moment, I can pull it up.
I'm pretty sure we have it on our agenda.
It just takes a moment. Thank you.
Are you going to pull it up, Arthur, or do you want me to?
Yes, through you, Mayor Kane. Gary, we're going to be presenting that information so everyone can see it via the screen share. Just takes a moment for it to refresh. Okay.
Perfect. Yes, I can see it now. So pleasure to be before you again. We, subsequent to the public meeting that we had, we've had some discussions with staff, and there are some minor refinements that have been directed by council. And then there's some options that staff thought we might consider and present to council, and happy to answer any questions as a result of the presentation. So we'll kind of go through step by step. So if we just recap where we were, I think that's a good starting point, because it's been 3 or 4 weeks. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Arthur, that'd be helpful. So the purpose, we were to take a look at infrastructure needs. Obviously, you recently completed an engineering plan, which made a number of recommendations to renewal, updating the existing infrastructure within the water system. So we've embraced that, identify how potentially we might fund that, and then take a look at the operating cost arising from that, and ultimately the rates. Next slide. And again, so we had indicated that the level of the rates, and I'll present this in a minute. A couple of factors that we need to consider as we move into this presentation is the fact that the present rates weren't at a level that would allow you to fully pay for your annual expenditures. So we were running a deficit, which is what the second bullet notes, and that deficit continues to rise. So one of the things we need to do is to ensure that the recommended rates are covering off your annual expenditures. The deficits right now are basically a loan from your other tax-supported financial resources, and we need to deal with that over time. As I noted, take a look at the capital plan. There's been some minor revisions, but we'll take a look at how to fund that. And then, as we've noted with the system right now, we haven't assumed any expansion customers to the system. Obviously, more customers potentially would add some level of revenue to what we'll present. But at the current time, we haven't included anything. Now, there are, as we understand, some vacant lots, but right now with the COVID situation, over the short, perhaps to medium term, we may not see new users coming on stream. So if anything, we've been relatively conservative in not planning for that. If we plan for a huge increase in users and they don't materialize, you continue to generate deficits, which is something we wanted to avoid. Next slide. So this just identifies that over the last 5 years, your expenditures have been just below, in total, 2.8 million, and your revenues have been about 2.2 million. So the difference, we've been shortfall of about almost $550,000. So that's where the loans that we've talked about have basically been financing this shortfall. And we have to ensure that when we're looking forward, we have to correct the rates to stop this deficit, and then actually over time make a provision for paying it back. Next slide, please. We talked about the capital program. GM Blue Plan, sorry, GM Blue Plan recently completed a detailed assessment of your water system and made a number of recommendations to improve the system over a number of years. So they had made recommendations on the highest priority works, general timing, and a cost estimate. This was reviewed by staff, and there were some refinements to that. And that was the plan that we presented at the public meeting. Next slide, please. our starting point with the funds that we have available to fund the capital infrastructure, which is in excess of $3 million. You can see this is where the reserve is in a deficit. Actually, it's showing here about 280,000, but for the end of 2020, it's over 500,000. So that's our starting point, is a deficit. We do have some specific reserves to deal with some specific costs for the infrastructure, but you don't pull that money into those particular cost items come into the capital forecast. Next slide, please. So what we did develop, so that $3.6 million in total, and that's inflated, we had suggested debt financing of about $1.9 million and building up from the operating budget to start to generate money to pay for the capital rather than continuing to issue debt year after year. So we generate about 1.7 over the 10-year period from rates, and 1.9 would be financed. And of course, once you issue the debt charges then go into your operating budget to be paid. So that debt, even though it's spreading the payments, it'll still cause an increase in your rates over time. Next slide, please. And I just need a moment because I can hear that my email's making noises. So, okay, I've corrected that problem. Sorry about that. I apologize. So the rates that we were identified are kind of laid out here over the 10-year period. And I apologize for its detail, but in essence, what we're looking at, you pay for a monthly base charge, or your residents on the water system pay for a monthly base charge. That's a fixed charge per month, and whether they're in Florida, well, nobody's in Florida right now, but if you're away and not using the system, you contribute a fixed amount, because basically, if you're away, you still expect when you come back that the water system is in great shape, functions, the water quality is good, etc. I think I've noted that probably about 85% of the ratepayers in Ontario have this fixed monthly charge, which is basically similar to what you have. We then have a volume charge, so you pay based on the amount of water being consumed, being reflected through your meter. And what you have is called an increasing block rate. So you get a certain amount of water, and at $5.06 per 1,000 gallons. So the first 5,000 gallons you get at that price. And if you exceed that, it jumps up to $7.60. And then if you exceed that block, you're up to $11. About 10% of Ontario municipalities use what's called an increasing block rate, similar to yourself. So you have these charges, including a capital charge, which is there in order to historically was set up to address transfers to the capital program. That was well before the Blue Plan recommendations were generated. So in essence, you can see that the plan that we had built, and I'll show you the corresponding charge on like the water bill, the average water bill. But you can see for the first 3 years, we were recommending 20% increases. And then after that, increasing at a rate of 5%. Now, for the most part, the 20% is needed, number one, to start to address that deficit, or to stop the negative balances. And as well, the capital program is generally a little bit more front-ended. Next slide. As I've noted, the water bill is presented here based on an average of about 38,000 gallons per customer. So we've looked, there are some that are above, some below. This is the average. And so for 2020, we're at about $817. And you can see with the rate increases, we're suggesting you would move up to $981 for 2021, 1177, 1412, and then 5% increases thereafter. So those were the levels of increase, and you can see we presented on a monthly basis what the change would be as an increase on your monthly finances. Next slide. And then lastly, we talked about that deficit that's about 511,000. And with the plan that we had, you can see for the first couple of years, we didn't do much to pay that down, but we at least halted the further deficits. So that was one of the things that we wanted to do, was to stop that deficit. And then once we hit a certain point around 2026 is where we start to really make realistic contributions. And by the end of 2031, that would be the point where we would fully pay off that deficit as of 2020. Next slide. So we are making, from the presentation we made, there's some adjustments to the base case. And if we go to the next slide. I think last week, council had suggested removing one project from the capital plan, which was the master plan associated with Creighton Heights. That would remove about $150,000 from the capital budget. So we've reworked the base case, what we're calling the base case, because we will consider some options that staff had suggested. And we've worked that in to basically reallocate, reduce the budget increase for the first couple of years from 20%, and we can move the water bill down to 16% increases for the next 3 years. With that and with some adjustments, we really haven't made adjustments to the amount of debt, but it does have an impact on the amount that we're borrowing from the tax supported. So it actually increased the loans along with interest. We would basically peak to about $750,000. So we go from the 512,000 here, we'd rise up to 750, and then it would start to decline over time. The debt, as I say, it really is unchanged, just a minor rounding, which was an extra $18,000. Now, doing this with the loan, it not only increases the amount, but it would extend. Remember, we said probably by the end of 2031, we would pay it off. It's adding another 4 or 5 years. So that under this assumption, we wouldn't have that paid off now to about 2035, 2036. And if we go to the next slide, you can see with the adjustments, you can see the 16% per year, as I've noted, and then a 5% each year thereafter. And that would modify the bill. If we go to the next slide, it'll actually give you the water rates, which are a little easier to see. So it would go from $817 now up to $948. So, and then after that to $1,100, $1,276, and then onward at 5%. So that will bring down the overall bill each and every year. But as I say, we've ended up having to use, now the one thing is you've removed the $150,000 expenditure, and corresponding with that, we've readjusted. But at the end of the day, we're at about 16% increases, but it still affects the year-to-year cash flow. Next slide. And this just shows you where we had that one graph that showed repayment on the public meeting base case, going from 500,000 and paying it off by 2031. As I've noted, it'll be a little over $700,000, and it extends us about another 5 years for the repayment. So as long as on the cash flow side with the tax supported, we're able to achieve this, then it that basically works. Next slide. There were 3 scenarios that staff had suggested we test further. We looked at the first one being 10% increases each and every year over the next 10 years. So rather than the 16, 16, 16, and then 5, 5, 5, 5, it would be 10 each year across the 10-year planning horizon. The second one would look at 10% increases for the first 3 years, and then 5 after that. And the third would look at 5% increases. Now, each of these helps to generate more revenue, but in the early stages, it's going to have an impact on your cash flow, which means we're going to have to borrow more from the tax supported, so more loan, and with a longer planning horizon to pay back that loan. So if we look at these, the next slide will give you the first scenario. So the 10% annual increase would basically, we've increased the debentures a little bit more than the base case, another $23,000. Once again, that's to try and round out in the early stages, just some of the capital. The deficit will basically go from the 512 now up to about $1 million by 2027. And then it starts to decline after that. And then that extends the payback from the base case, the revised base case, extends it from basically 2035, another 9 years out to 2034. So as long as we have the ability to increase the amount of the loan, then we could increase it 10% per year, and it just spreads out the loan over a longer period of time and increases the amount. Next slide. At the 10 and 5, oh, sorry. So this would be the rates per customer. And if we go to the next slide, we'll show you the water, the bill. And that's the one that basically is the most easy to understand. So you can see now we dropped the increases from $817 roughly to just below $900 for 2021. And then at the 10% increases, we basically rise about $90 per year each and every year, which is in the range of about $7.50 to $8 as we move out. So that would be the 10%, and that would be the impacts on the ratepayers. But as I say, it has its impacts on the township's finances. Next slide. This one gives us the 10% for 3 years, and then we drop down to the 5%. Now that'll have the impact of increasing. The last one, we went from 511 up to $1 million loan. This will take us up to a $2.1 million loan at the peak. And now we don't start, and that'll be annual draws every year out to 2036. And it will be 2036 when we start to pay back the loans. So you can see we don't pay the loans back now until 2046. So originally 2031, we're now adding an extra 15 years from the base case to pay off that deficit. Next slide. This is the 5%, and you can, next slide, please. So at the 2%, we went through this. This was the, this is the 10, 10, 5, 5, 5. So you can see the first 3 years are exactly like the prior option. So we're going up roughly $90 a year, and then we'll go up by a little over $45 a year for each year after that. I'll summarize all these so it'll be easier to compare them, but I just wanted to present to you the details so that if you want to look back on this presentation later and see how we've arrived at everything, basically full disclosure. Next slide, please. And then the last one, as we say, 5% extending out each and every year. And that would be continuing basically over a very long period of time, that 5%. And that would take us up to, excuse me, a $4.4 million loan. So we would have to significantly draw down from tax-supported financial resources in order to cash flow this. The cash flow is we'll continue to draw each and every year until we get out to 2041, and then we'll peak and start to pay down the loans. And it'll take us until 2054 to actually pay down those loans. Now, obviously, this has the least impact on the year-to-year increases on the rates. And if we jump ahead 1 or 2 slides, just jump ahead 2 slides so we can see the impact on the bill. You can see that, instead of the last one peaking at 900 in the first year, moving up to 900 in the first year, this one will move us to 858 from the 817. And then we'll go up to 900, and then basically 5% every year would be costing us roughly about $40 to $45 increases each and every year. Now, this comes with a significant impact price, as we've talked about. And if we take a look at, as I've noted, this will extend out the loan. So if we go to the next slide, what we wanted to show you, and this is the key thing, is keep in mind right now, last year, we still weren't generating enough money. So we continued to borrow from the tax supported. If we don't have the level of increases we've talked about, then you can see we've given you all the different options, and each option basically continues to increase and extend out over a longer period of time the amount of the loan. The orange was the base case, talking to getting us out to 2031. That was the base case we presented at the council meeting, the public meeting. So that's the 20% scenario. The blue is going down to 16%. So that increases us to about 750,000 and extends us out to roughly 2035, 2036. And then the $1 million, the first option is about $1 million, and actually it extends us out. I think the graph is wrong here. It extends us out a little further than 2035. And then you can see scenario 2 goes out to 2045, scenario 3 out to 2054. So with choices that are available to council, it's a blend between rate increases and very, very long-term loans to the property taxes. And once again, this takes into account a level of spending on the capital side that we're aware of for the first 10 years. We're not quite sure what's out there in the next 10 years. So this could be affected by a number of different factors. Could be affected by changes in provincial legislation, changes in the needs for the capital program. So the percentage increases we've assumed outside the 10-year planning horizon are subject to variability because we don't know, we don't have any further data. So this one here, all we tried to do was adjust with the loans to demonstrate how it would be achieved if you needed to go with those level of rate increases. Next slide. This just summarizes, and we've given you color codes. So each color gives you the total annual bill. The orange was the original base case, and you see we went from 817 up to 1988, and that was the 20% for 3 years, and then the 5% thereafter. The blue is the revised base case that we gave you at the beginning, which is 16% increases for 3 years, and then the 5%. So that takes us from down to about $1,800 annual bill by the end of the 10 years. Scenario 1 is 10% right across the board, and it actually increases in excess of the base case. At the end of that period, your actual bill is a little bit higher. Scenario 2 at 10% and then 555 brings you in at $1,500 bill, and then scenario 3 brings you in at $1,331. just as a perspective, I do not think that the scenario 3 is doable at all. There's too much risk, too much loans that need to be there, and you're not generating enough money in the 10-year period to basically fund your annual expenditures. So just a perspective, I don't think the red scenario 3 is doable. Scenario 2 as well does have quite a drag on your financial resources. Once again, your loans are in excess of $2 million. But that's something to consider. So I would believe that the first 3 are within a reasonable range for consideration from purely financial perspective from the municipality's financing side. I know there's a lot more considerations, but the first 3 would be within a range, I would believe, of achievability to balance your financial stability versus the impact on the ratepayer. Next slide. And next slide. So this is the final slide. Obviously, we've presented you with a number of rate scenarios, something for your consideration and to provide staff and ourselves direction. We will update the study so it'll reflect all of the information that supports whichever rate scenario you select. And then based on that is what we would need to prepare the mandatory study that has to be filed to the province in support of your license to run your water system. So that, through you, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Turn this over to council. Scott, I saw your hand first.
Thank you, Bill. I have several questions. With your approval, I'd like to ask them one after another. First of all, thank you, Gary. Scott Gibb here. Sorry for the raspy voice. First of all, I should say, I believe that all parties, whether it be council, staff, or water users, all are aware of the position that we're in. Possibly some additional information can be shared with our water users that may or may not have it already to assist them in understanding. That's something we need to do in the future. The other component is we're all cognizant of the fact that we are time sensitive in this decision. And that's where I start my questions, Gary, if I might. Gary, we need to file certain information. I understand that. We need to look at our rate increases. However, at the same time, our water users have asked us to put a stay on an increase for a period of time. I don't know whether that period of time is 6 months or a year. In the scenarios, whether previously or now, I don't see any consideration of just sliding the rate increase date from February of 2021 to February of 2022. If we were to do that, it would provide us, the municipality, and working with our water users, an opportunity to beat the bushes per se, to see if we could get any funding from provincial or federal sources that we don't feel that is there today. We have had some communication, albeit not myself, that our MPP feels strongly that we could have some money from provincial levels become available. If those scenarios were to be worked and money became available from other sources, and hence my question, Gary, would that not significantly reduce the water rate increases? And at the same time, I need to ask, can we put a stay on increases for 1 year and still meet the requirements of our license?
Okay, so a couple of questions through you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll take them in stages. The reporting document, I think, is required to be filed very, very shortly. I think it's actually by the end of this month. There may be an opportunity to connect with the province, see if you can get a extension, but that would have to be considered by staff, followed up by staff. So but we need to file a document that's mandatory. If we didn't increase the rates, you saw that between 2019, 2020, we increased the deficit by over $200,000. I would expect that you would probably, the money's not there. And I'm not quite clear when, and I would believe that we would see funding available for capital over time. And I think I mentioned that at the public meeting. I have heard from the, discussions at the federal level of doing similar to what we had in 2008, a Build Canada type of fund. But there's been no program announced. I don't know when it'll be announced. I don't know what the funding percentages are. So there's no details on the street. And normally those processes, once they've announced it, there's a period of time for filing, let's say 2, 3, 4 months. I think 3 or 4 months has been the norm. Then there's a period of time, and Ontario Ag and Food have been the ones to evaluate it. They have to evaluate everybody in Ontario. And then you would get some confirmation back. By the time you get the confirmation, you may or may not be still in this fiscal year. So I don't know what you do with your capital program for 2021. I would be skeptical whether any of your 2021 capital program would be funded by grants unless there's something that your local member of parliament is aware of that they have access to, that they can move to you, but I don't know. So if you want a 0% increase this year, obviously you can pass a 0% increase. There are impacts, and as long as my job is to speak with you and try and do some assessment and advise you of the potential impacts. So I can do that. And then it'll be your choice, Councillor, and the rest of Council. What if you want a rate increase, and if not, or if so, what would it be?
Thank you, Gary. So what I heard just in summary is, yes, we could put a stay on increases. Could we review it in 1 year from now and go to the other options that you have presented at this point in time?
I think my answer is, Councillor, Council always have the ability to make decisions. The decision that we're going with a 0% increase may also have the decision to borrow another $250,000 for this year, because it was over $200,000 shortfall for 2020. So for this year, it may be a $250,000. So if you're saying, yes, we'd like to have a 0% increases, it may say at the same time, let's borrow another $250,000 from the tax supported. So it's a true prong answer, unfortunately. If you cancel all of your capital program, then that's a decision to be made with respect to how well the system's functioning. That's a choice as well, but I'm not an engineer. I can't advise you the impacts. I don't know what the performance level is for the infrastructure that was recommended for this year. That's outside my ability to answer. So that would have to be something that'd be pursued.
Thank you, Gary. Bill, that's all the questions I have at this time.
Great. Other members of council? Mark, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bill. And thank you, Gary, for your presentation again. I'm kind of coming along the lines of Scott here and some of my questions. And my question would be just leave the 5% for this year and move the 20s over to the next 3 years, and given the opportunity, that way it gives opportunity rather than just a zero. So that would give some opportunity. And I realize it would increase the debt for this year, but it would also maybe buy some time, and hopefully we come up with some money or ways of getting money. Just a statement, not really a question to be made from that. But my questions come down to interest rate. What interest rate are you using, Gary? And is there any inflation at all in that interest rate, or have you left it steady?
Basically, we've assumed 2%.
What percent,
That's that-
sorry?
2%,
2%?
yes, which if you went out to borrow from the province, it would be in excess of that, but we've used a 2% rate as a overall payback.
And continue. And my other part of the question would be the 150,000 that we've taken out of the expenditures to the water rate users dealing with that study. Where does that fit in on this? I'm just not clear to what happened with that. You left your rates the same, but the 150,000 didn't seem to make any difference.
It didn't per se, because you do recall that you're running a couple $100,000 deficit. So moving the 150,000 out, basically is really an adjustment between debt and your payback. So it really we recognized an overall adjustment we looked at it over a couple of years, increased the amount of the loans and traded off with some reduction in debt. And that's how we were able to get it to 16. We looked at it over 3 years, because I would believe that council was trying to see what the reduction would be. And that's how we treated it. Considering it was mostly debt, the immediate impact wasn't there.
And I guess my other question to go along with that is, by taking that out, if there is funding available, it would be nice to have it done. By taking it out, will that decrease our eligibility of getting that funding to get that project going? Because I mean, there may be significant savings by doing that project at some point.
Perhaps, through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess it all comes down to what the conditions of the grant program are. It's been a little hit and miss on the exact parameters from there's been several programs historically. Some of them say that you can't apply the money if the project has been let. So if you've started a project, no money is eligible.
Right.
That's why I say some of the grants may not touch any of the 2021 projects, because they haven't even announced it. Then you're going to do, whenever they do, you're going to have three to 4 months to apply for it. And then they're going to have to evaluate it. I'm very skeptical that unless, as I say, your member of parliament has some insights, which obviously I don't have. It may be 2022 by the earliest you would see grants being applied to your capital program,
Okay.
just based on history.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Gary, for that.
No, my pleasure.
Larry?
I have a couple of questions and comments. First off, I fully have confidence in our staff, the water staff, to provide the quality drinking water for the township. Secondly, I do lack confidence in council and staff for the fiscal responsibility that's been taking place over the years. But I want to say, is it possible if we take 5% increase, and then look at outsourcing the water to the third party? I don't know. We haven't factored any growth in here. We don't have funds to grow. And I wonder if by going to a third party, we could get them to take on the water responsibility, and then also to fund the growth in the future. because we haven't funded any growth in the future. So my only comments is that, you know, should we be going out to an RFP, third party? Because there's so many unknowns. And the other factor is, would a third party touch it right now? I mean, surely they're in the business for profit. We don't seem to be doing a very good job on profit. So those are my only comments about going to 5% and then RFPing out to third party. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I don't have a screen, Pat, but you haven't weighed in
Yeah.
yet. Do you have comments?
I'm here, and
No, you're here.
I wish that I could follow sort of the line that the rest of council's taking, but I'm very concerned. Gary, am I right in assuming that when you talk about the debt that is owed, that's not including any potential debt that we're going to need to incur to keep our system at the place it's at?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was probably two levels of debt. I had debt charges, which is external debt, whether you're borrowing through the provincial program, or the other is the internal debt. That's the loan from the property taxpayer. So one's external, those are debentures, those are borrowing, and then there's your internal debt.
Okay, so the reason that I'm struggling so much with the not doing an increase at this time is because at our budget meeting last week, we had over $200,000 in capital requests for water. And completely separate from the 150,000 for the study. So we know that there's more things that need to be done that are fairly critical to keep things going as well as they're going. We know that we have debt that needs to be paid back. I am hopeful that we're able to get other funds coming in, whether it be by grant or anything else. I honestly don't know what happens to our internal debt if we were to look at going to a third party. I don't know how that gets paid off. Maybe somebody else can help me with the financial end of that. And I don't think this is anything that can be decided within the next 2-3 months. I think that there's a lot of things that have to continue. But regardless, we know that the water rate is going to increase somewhat. Are we able to, at this point, because we can change it at any time, if I understood Gary correctly, like we can annually do a change, could we do the 16% for this year and at this point put 0 for the years following so that we have time to sort it out? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Pat. So I'm gonna weigh in. I got some questions. First of all, for staff, it has been a discussion that a postponement of the financial segment of this that's submitted to the province can be delayed. Have we done that? Can we do that? Before I go on with anything else. Arthur or Nusrat?
So through you, Mayor King, we did put the request in, and back in December, we were advised at that time that they were requesting us to put the package of material in, provide us what we could, and one of the documents is the water plan. They said if you do have any delays, they would work with us as far as the receipt of all the documentation. But certainly a complete application includes all those pieces, which is licensing information, financial plan, as part of it. So we have asked. They have not extended it. They did say they would work with us, so they know that some documents may follow, but they've asked us just to submit all the material at this point.
Thank you. And I believe that once again, our MPP has offered his assistance in us in attempting to get this delay, correct?
That's my understanding as well, yes.
Okay, thank you for that. So the only thing that I can agree on with general feeling from members of council is that I'd like to see us try to do something on a 1-year interim basis to get us through this first year. I am completely, I know this is going to sound strange, Pat, but I'm completely on board with you. I don't think we can have a zero, absolutely positively not, or 5% increase. All we're going to do is incur more debt for a year and put ourselves in a worse situation. And there is no guarantee that we're going to be given a grant. As optimistic as we want to be, it's important, I believe, to front end load this debt, because if we don't, we're going so far down into debt. How are we going to tell non-water users that we're willing to take on $1 million debt against our levy? There's no possible way we can do that. I know we're hearing, to a great extent from our water rate users right now, and I understand their situation, and I know they're not happy about the money, but I'm also hearing from non-water users, and they don't want to loan $500,000, and I haven't even discussed $1 million to the water users. It just can't happen. I'm looking at the real numbers, the dollars and cents numbers. The 20% increase that was first suggested converts up to about $13.70 or something per month. The 16% is $10 a month, 10% is $7 a month, and the 5% is $3.50. So even if we went to the very bottom rate, the actual dollars and cents is $10 a month per water rate user. That average water rate user, that $10 a month is going to manifest itself into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. I could not support us going to a 1 year delay or even 1 year at 5%. I absolutely cannot. I might have my arm twisted to go to 10%, but that would be the absolute minimum. I do agree with all members of council that I don't think we need to settle our minds today on a full 5-year plan, but I do believe we have to do something for 1 year, settle that so that we can pass that information on and try to move forward with this. Something else that we need to do, and I believe Arthur's worked extensively on this already, but there was quite a list of questions and possibilities for how monies could be raised, presented to us by petitioners. And I think we need to address each and every single one of those and answer each and every single one of those as to why they are or they are not feasible. And obviously any of those that involve taking monies from the municipality as a whole are not feasible. I'm like you. I'm very hopeful we can get some kind of grant money, and that would allow us to make some changes, perhaps this time next year. But as unpalatable as this is, I cannot support us doing anything today that is going to send us reeling deeper and deeper into the pocketbooks of the general reserve. I simply, and I mean, I know we all have a vote, but I simply will not support us going deeper and deeper into debt. So I'll toss that back out to other members of council for comebacks. Yes, Scott.
Just a question to Gary before I react or respond to your thoughts. Gary, GM Blue Plan had millions of dollars of requirements for capital over a period of time. You factored in all of those into your rate increases, I believe?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think from the original plan that they had submitted, I think there were reductions made by staff. I'm going to take a stab in the dark. I think there was probably a delay in some of it in the range of about $500,000. But then there was a couple of projects that staff had identified that weren't included, which more observational from day-to-day operations that they may not have seen, and staff added some cost back in. I think it was in my original presentation 2 times ago, which I can resend to you, and it had the adjustments noted in there.
I acknowledge those adjustments, Gary. Thank you. Just one follow-up question for you, Gary. If we were to attempt to not go into deficit anymore in 2021, and this is for clarity, what percentage of increase would we need in 2021 to maintain and not increase the debt for 1 year?
I would have to, through you, through the mayor, I'd have to look at it. That's why we were recommending the 20%, because that stopped the negative. And with the capital program, we were predominantly funding it from external debt. So we're internal loans and external debt in order to get us to stop that any more loans. It may be tweaked a little bit. I would say, sure. You know, what if we wanted to delay some further projects or do something? I'd have to, I can't answer on the fly right now, but I would say you're probably, that's why we recommended 20%. If we come down a little bit, we might be able to work with staff to make some minor adjustments, but I would probably suggest 20% is what you need because of the, as I say, this year, I think you're probably running without a percentage increase, maybe a $250,000 deficit. So you've got to address that deficit.
If I could, one further thing, Bill. Financing debt is something I fought my whole life not to do, whether it be at the municipality in the last few years, or whether it be in my personal life, or anything I've tried to relay on to anyone in my family. I'm understanding your position fully about not going into debt any further, regardless of the source of that money. And I'll just leave it at that and let the other council members speak. Thank you, Bill.
Larry, I see your hand.
I know I'm the new kid on the block, but are we not going to consider going outside to a third party to run the operation? Is that not a viable consideration? I mean,
I'll answer very quickly, Larry. At this point, I would say absolutely nothing is off the table, nothing. But if we can come to a number that we can live with today, that will give us a year to do. And what you're suggesting is one of the things that we'll have time to. I'll leave that. That's how I feel about it. That a third party is definitely on the table. It's something we need to research, but we need some time. We need to buy some time to be able to do that. So I'll turn that over to staff if they have any further thing to add to that.
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Arthur Nusrat, anything?
No, I think your comment's quite right. We are, and we continue to look for all options to improve our operations. Our MPP has provided us with contacts with the ministry as far as discussions, and we're having some of those later in the week. We continue to look at improvements with our new water manager. We're doing that. We have brought that issue to council before, but obviously it is still something we can look at or bring back to council for their consideration. The one note I will make is we do have a fairly significant capital as well as water processing issue with the plants. And so those issues and those demands are the ones that are driving a big part of the spend. So irrespective of the service provider, we'll continue to have that as an issue we will have to manage, obtain funding for, provide development charge grants, whatever source of funding we may be able to achieve to deal with those issues. So I guess I'm trying to say is that still an issue to be managed in the future, but we will obviously look at all options going forward and come back to council with some of those options.
Thanks, Arthur. We looked at the capital projects last week, and without bringing up any more alarms, hitting any more panic buttons, so several of those things they're in the urgent stage. Any one of those situations can cause us to lose the ability to provide water in less than a day's notice. And I know Gary suggested that staff may be able to put some of those capital projects aside. I don't know which ones it would be. That they're significantly important, most of the ones that we discussed. So I haven't heard back from Mark or Pat. Did either of you want to weigh back in? Yes, Mark?
It's an awful decision to have to make, I know. And I mean, it's one that, we're going to be liked by some and hated by others, no matter how we do it. I just having a really hard time adding 20% to a budget. I mean, or to a ratepayer of any sort, of any kind of increase. It's a tough one. And I know, I can remember the water rate users had that a number of years ago, because we had to do upgrades back probably 10 or 12 years ago, which amounted to into, I think it was near $800,000. We were able to get that down. So I don't know. It's a tough decision. And to be honest with you, right now, I don't know the answer to it. I wish I did. I wish we had more time to come up with that. I wish we had time to even have more time to consult with the water rate users, which we haven't got anymore. What is the drop deadline to give a decision on this? Is this the day today and that's it? I guess I'll have to ask staff or Gary that question. Is there time that we can buy another month somehow?
Through you, Mayor Kane, the application deadline is mid-February for all the materials. But what that requires is between now and then, which is why we have a recommendation for council to make a decision on one of the rate options, is so that the actual plan can then be prepared. So it's not an overnight process. We have to go back to Gary Scanlon and his group and ask for the water plan to then be prepared, and that would be submitted as part of the package materials for mid-February. And we're hoping to get that approval today as part of that process.
Is it possible, I guess, Arthur, a question would be, can we, and I don't even know how much we can put forward without having the financial plan, but can you put forward enough information without the financial plan? Is that possible to delay your financial plan for a month? I mean, this is a dreadful decision to make. I mean, it really is. I mean, I just worry that there's going to be a lot of water rate users that are not aware how this is going to affect them. And they're not going to know until they get their first bill, is my concern.
So through you, Mayor Kane, the increase or any increase or the new water bill amounts would not come out to April 1st in any case. As far as the present procedure, we're proposing a change to when that increase occurs. It would occur January 1st in all future years. However, again, that's why we're at least looking to have a decision for this year. And as Gary Scanlon has mentioned before, the rate itself could be revisited in 2022 for 2022 as well. But at least providing you a range of any increase or no increase has an impact over time to the amount of debt and the amount of time it takes to repay it. So this is why we want to at least give you those range of repayment schedules, make a decision, and then we would prepare the material for the calculation, the application, and then that would have an impact on the April 1st bills.
I guess just to follow up on that, Arthur, I mean, I don't know what words have been said to our MPP, or even, I don't even think anybody's even contacted our MP that I'm aware of. Has staff done that at all, or is it just the ratepayers themselves that have talked to them?
Earlier this year, we made an application to the ICIP program. We made sure that the MPP's office was aware of the application at that time. More recently, I believe the ratepayers, some of the local residents have contacted the MPP's office to discuss funding options or funding possibilities, and they've been the ones providing information about that level of support. My contact with the MPP's office has been to set up further contact this year for discussions, and also to get information from them on what we could do to get their assistance or their ideas, contacts with respect to operating improvements. They assisted me with that. I have not asked them for grants presently because I know that the funding announcements, there's no present program, and that they're looking at programs later this year. So my discussions at this point is I would follow up with them on that. However, they've assisted me right now with contacts with the ministry about looking for operational improvements for our system.
You good, Mark? Pat, I heard back from you. Are you still shocked that I agree with you?
I do have a couple more comments. First of all, Gary, am I right in thinking that we could do an increase this year and leave it at 0 for the following years until we get further information?
Once again, Councillor, it's whatever council wants. The increase this year, we can then re-look at everything, based on if grants and such, and see what the implications are of this. Would at least, for the most part, bring you to a 0, stop the negative on the borrowing, the internal loan. So then, yeah, we could relook at what it means for the rest of the time.
Okay, and I apologize, I lost connection for a while during your presentation. Am I right in thinking that the reason you started with 20%, you went to 16% was when we said we weren't going to follow through on the $150,000 consultation?
Yes, the moving it down to 16 was really doing some realignment over the 3 years, but trying to keep the same level of debt at the end of 3 years. But it meant some borrowing from increase in the internal loans.
So thank you for that information. That was my understanding, but I wasn't sure if I had missed something. I do not like the idea of putting this off a month. I don't think a month is going to be a useful period of time to get enough more information. We have been dealing with this since November and keep saying 1 more month, 1 more month. I think that we do need to look at all options, but I think I still go with what I said right at the beginning. I think for now we should make the increase and make 0 for the following 4 years, with the understanding that we're using this year to properly investigate the situation to see what our best options are. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Pat. So if I can summarize from what I'm hearing from all members of the council, we all agree on one thing, that we want to revisit this in a year. That we want to have that breathing space, which would allow us to, simply seek out every and any possible way that we can reduce the debt to the water and the increased payments to our water users, which would include applying for grants and looking at the monies we already have, if there's any way that it can be reallocated, if we have a third party take over the system, whatever. It gives us a year to do that. So, if someone disagrees with that, then we need to know, because otherwise I think that's a good premise for us to start on, that we got to come up with a solution here. I agree with Pat. Yeah. But hopefully we're all agreeing that this is stopgap. This is here some time to work on this and make every effort in the world that we don't have to continue this high percentage increase, year after year. So first of all, is anybody opposed to that? If you are, I need to hear it from you. Okay, so at least I have that much right. So we're on the same page, that we realize that we don't put a 5-year program today, and whether we use numbers that Pat suggested at 0 or with other numbers, it doesn't matter, because we're going to come back and relook at this within the year anyway, no matter what other numbers we put down. The only number that really matters for us today is the number we choose for this year's increase. And that's, I guess, where we've got a sticking point. Number from 0 to 16. we need to work on that number. I don't know if you want to have a little more discussion on that. It seems to be we're pretty divided. Pat and I are at the top end, and other people are in the middle and at the low end. So we have to come up with some positive discussion here and get a number that makes sense for us all. So I see Larry trying to come in. Larry, so go ahead.
Well, I took a look at us from 2015, 2020, and it looks like a 10% increase year over year to what we're paying right now. That's what I see. In total, it was from 2015 to 2020, it was a 55% increase overall. And I think that where it factors out to about a 10% increase year over year. I may be wrong.
Can we have
So
any
if we were-
verification? Excuse me, Larry, could we have any verification on that number? Does staff have that knowledge that they could give us?
My math could be incorrect, but
Through you, Mayor Kane.
Yes.
Sorry, just Larry, what numbers are you referring to, just so I can, we can refer to them?
sure. Well, if you take a look at the 2015 rates, Hamilton Township was a monthly rate of $463, and in 2020 it's $817.
And is this from a water plan?
Yes.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yeah.
I have the current bylaw in front of me, and what I can say is since 2017 to 2020, consumption rate increased by 5.5%. So that's 4 years that consumption rate increased by 5.5%. This is for the first 1,000 gallon. So if you just look at our bylaw that we have, I have in front of me right now, consumption charge per 1,000 gallon for the first 5,000 gallon used in 2017, the rate was $4.80. Now for 2020, it's $5.06, which is an increase of 5.5%.
Over 3 years.
From 17 to 2020, that's 4 years.
Those were more the numbers I had in mind. I thought we were only increasing by about 2%, which is why it's one of the reasons we're in the mess we're in.
Right. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I look at 17 to 18, it's less than 2%. 18 to 19, again, less than 2%. 19 to 20 is less than 2%.
Thank you. The numbers are the numbers that are in my mind.
I was looking at the monthly bill.
But if they're using more water, the bill's going to go up.
But it was on the average. That's what,
Yeah.
From the base rates.
Well, I'll get the ball rolling if you'd like, Mr. Mayor, and make a motion that we, for 1 year, raise by the 16%. That will keep us even. And for the 4 years following, at this point, we leave it at 0.
Is there a seconder for that motion? I'm not sure the 0 makes sense, Pat. That may be why you're not getting a seconder. If we want to go with that plan, we can go with it. And then we are, regardless of what we're doing, we're going to revisit at the end of the first year. So anything that's in the plan after that is going to be opened up again, prior to this time next year. I don't know if that's the reason you're not getting a seconder or not.
I suspect it's about the rate that I'm saying for this year. But if you would like me to try it, then I will make it that it's 16% this year with 10% the following years. That I still don't think is going to get us really where we want to be, but it gives us the opportunity to look for other funding methods.
Is there a seconder? Well, that's disappointing. I'll take any of their motions then. Want to come forward? Scott,
Contrary to my thoughts up until today, I will bring forward a motion of a 10% increase for 2021. And I think I would like to split that and leave it right there to see if there's a seconder to that, and then come back to the following years.
I see Mark's hand.
I'll second it. I'd like to speak on it though when I get an opportunity.
Absolutely. Scott, do you have anything more before we move it on to Mark then?
No, I'm looking forward to discussion.
Right. Mark, you're up.
I think it's important if we pass the 10%, that the next 3 years should be put down as 20s and the next bunch are left at 5s. I think it's important to do that because I think we need to let ratepayers know or water users know that they're going to have to pay these amounts unless we come up with some funding. And without showing those 20s in there, I think it's going to be misleading no matter what we do. And I think they're going to be needed from what Gary said all along and what staff said all along and what we've seen as far as needs in capital projects. So I'd like to see them left there for now. If we get funding, then we go forward and we can reevaluate the plan and resubmit perhaps in a year from now. But I think it's important to leave those 20s in there for now and let people know that, there is issues there. I also think we need to get a committee established ASAP on this water. And I don't mean a monthly committee. I mean, they can meet once or twice, maybe 3 times a year to know why and why we're spending the money, where we're spending the money, and let them be aware that, unless we get outside funding, it's going to happen. So I think, we need to have some public knowledge on this. And that to me is the only way we can get public knowledge. So that's where I am on it. I'm more than happy with the 10%. And as I say, I'd like to see the 320s left in there and 5s from then on. And reevaluate it a year from now if we get funding. And if we don't, then it's going to stay like this. I mean, we can't just hide it. I mean, it's there. It's the need. And I also think a committee being established is much needed. And as I say, 3 or 4 times a year, maybe at most, and let them see at budget time what we're spending their money on and what the needs are and why they're there, so they have an understanding. I think it's their system, and it's they should have a right to have some say in this. So that's my spiel or thoughts, and I'll leave it to the next person.
So we'll have to go back to Scott and Mark, because you're actually seconding more than the motion that he's put forward. So I'll have to go back and see if he's willing to, continue with his motion under those stipulations that you set down.
Am I on mute or not? I can't see my screen.
No, you're good, Scott.
I intentionally made it for 1 year to get us past that component. And I think anything subsequent to that, I would like to see in another motion.
I'm not sure if we can pass something for just 1 year, Scott, because we have to submit this plan. So it has to go in as a 5-year plan. So, but as I said to Pat, whatever we place in year 2, 3, and 4, and 5, we know we're going to revisit that within the year, whether it's zeros or 50s, whatever number we put in there, we're going to revisit at the end of the year. So I think whatever motion you put forward, you need some numbers to fill in that 5-year plan. I'll go quickly to staff, because I could be, maybe I'm wrong. So we can go to Nuzrit, please. And is that what we need to do, Nuzrit? Do we need to have numbers for 5 years?
To you, Mr. Mayor, having a rate for the next few years would be helpful for us to do the financial plan. But because the financial plan will be prepared by Gary, I will pass that to Gary to answer.
Thank you.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we do need some direction so that we can finalize the plan. But the document, that what the province says about the plan is that it's a living document, which means through the budget process, it can vary. So you're not restricted just because you give us direction on that document. As I say, I think it's, the opportunity to review things, see what grants are available, other options, and then review it for next year's budget, I think is a very good plan.
Thank you. So I'm hearing this, Scott, we do need to have this as a 5-year, plan, a block of suggested increases. So Larry wants to weigh in, but I'm going to finish with Scott first. If you are willing to put some more full motion forward, or would you want to leave it and let others weigh in?
I simply have a question. Can it not be a single motion on 2021 and then a second motion on the balance of the 4 years? Is that proper, or can that be proper?
Don't know. Need staff help. Or Gary help.
From my perspective, Mr. Mayor, I think that as long as we have direction from council, whether it's in one part or two part, from my perspective, I think it works. I'm not sure from how you structure your resolutions and your council bylaw, whether I would look to the clerk to see, or Nazrat to advise whether there's something unique that I'm thinking of.
Thank you.
Through Mayor Kane, we could work with a two-part resolution, but as long as it deals with a 5-year plan, that's what we're looking at. And I think there's definitely a discussion here that this is a 1 year, the rate that we're looking at, the discussion will occur, and those rates being part of a living document would be updated for 2022 and on.
Thank you. So if we go back to Scott, then we need a full motion that deals either in two parts or in one part with a 5-year plan.
Well, first part is 10%. I'm hoping to get a separate motion completely, which is, to be honest with you, actually what I thought Arthur said. So my mistake.
No, sorry if I can interrupt. I believe you could still have two motions as long as when we come out of the meeting, through Mayor Kane, that we have the information dealing with the 5-year plan. So we can have one motion dealing with the 1 year, a second motion dealing with the remaining. They could be passed as two separate motions, but they'll still give us the information over the 5-year period.
Thank you. So Scott has moved the motion then that we deal with the first year in exclusivity as a 10% increase. Is there somebody still willing to second that? I know, Mark, you were seconded originally, but you had some stipulations. Is anyone willing to second a 1-year motion at 10%?
Sorry for interrupting, Mayor Kane.
Yes.
Councillor Lovshin has just contacted me, and while we're trying to connect with him, I've got him on a speakerphone by the computer, so we'll try and operate with that.
We've lost him, haven't we? Okay, sorry.
Are you there now, Mark?
So Pat, I got you with hands up.
I just wanted to say that, sorry, I just lost my thought for a second, that much as I don't like the idea of even adding to our debt a little bit by staying at 10%, I will support that to at least get us going if that's the way it needs to be. I don't think it's the best choice, but I also think that we need to come to a group decision. And I'm strongly in support of the committee idea.
Larry?
They do present it in scenario 1 at 10% across the board. Now it takes us up to $1 million, but it still gives us a number. And at least we can work through the first year at 10% and then go from there.
I thought the first choice was the 16%.
Well, it says here, scenario number 1 is 10% increase. That's what I got here. Is that not right, Gary?
Through you, we presented to you a modified base case. That's the 16% for 3 years and then 5. Scenario 1 is actually 10% per year across the,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay, so I misworded that. It's the adjusted base case that keeps us with no increased debt, which is my first choice. But like I said, I think it's important that we get through this as a group.
Yeah, well, whatever anybody else is doing, I'm gonna go.
Larry, you still have more? Nope. Mark?
Sorry, can you try that again, Mark?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm not sure what the final proposal's been suggested. I know Scott and I talked and I heard some comments since, but because I was offline for a while, I may be lost somewhere. So I'm not 100% where we are right now. So maybe, Bill, can you just kind of clarify what you're asking?
Yeah, we've had, it's been clarified that we can either go with one motion for the first year and a second motion for the succeeding 4 years. Scott wants to go with a one motion for 1 year at 10%. We look for a seconder or not. I think Pat said she'd be willing to second it. Larry then suggested that we use that scenario 1, which is a 10%, which goes across the board. That was not part of the original motion. I've got more weigh in, but I'll leave it with you, Mark, if you've got something else.
Yeah, I'm still back at that 10, 20, 20, 20, and then the 5s afterwards. That's kind of where I am, but I think I already had my spiel on it, so I think everybody understood where I am.
Thank you. And Pat's already said that this 10%, even though she seconded, is not her first choice. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure on her concession, but I absolutely will not support 10% across the board, which puts us $1 million in debt. Absolutely, positively, I'm a no. Flat out, positive no. I'm with the scenario that was brought forward as altered, which is the 16%. I don't know how I could be persuaded to anything less, although if it was 10% followed by successive years of 20, and that would be the greatest concession that I'm willing to make. So I believe we have a motion on the floor which suggests 10% for the first year, and we have yet to have a straight out, flat out second for that. Everyone who wants to second it wants to add something to it. And Scott doesn't want it to be.
I'll second that bill to get that one dealt with then.
All right. Is there any further discussion on 10% at the first year? All right. So we're calling the vote, but I want to make sure that through our clerk's department that this is actually a recorded vote. I know it's on water. That needs to be an actual recorded vote. So I'll call the question in favor of 10% in the first year only. Scott.
Yay.
Pat.
Yay.
Mark.
Yay.
Larry.
Yay.
Bill is no. So motion's carried 4-1. We're looking for a motion to deal with the succeeding 4 years of the plan.
I will make a motion. It's Pat that we do 20% for the following 4 years.
4 years. I'm sorry, I got Gary's hand up. Gary, you need to interject here.
yes, I do. I apologize. The way the plan, the financial plan is set up, it's for the current year plus 5. So it's actually, you've got the first year. I need 5 more years, not 4, just to be clear.
Okay, thank you.
I will amend my motion. Because I don't have figures exactly in front of me. If I'm way off base, somebody will going to have to help me out here. I'll do 20% for the following 3 years, 10%, 5% for the 2 after that.
Second that bill.
So we have a mover and a seconder. Any discussion? I think the significant thing here is that this is going to be revisited after the first year. Yes, Scott.
I didn't hear who seconded that or the discussion. Was there
Mark.
any discussion then after that?
Not from Mark, simply seconded it.
Okay. Can the motion include that it have a mandatory review? And also, I think it's maybe even an option. Could we have a mandatory setup of committee as well to that motion? Or does it need to be clear?
Oh, I'll have to go back to Pat. We're being asked if you do a friendly amendment, which included a mandatory review after or prior to, prior to the second year, and to include a committee to study.
So my actual question is, I have no problem with either of those requests, but I'm wondering if, again, they should be in a separate motion, because then they don't, like, do we want that? Does the motion as it stands get sent with the plan to the government? And should we do it separately? Which is cleaner? I don't know if it makes a difference.
I think it might be cleaner too, and I'm going to go to Gary for his input, please.
I think it can be separated. I think the rates are the one thing. You've got then operational process, which is ensure that you're doing a 2022 review and setting up a committee. I would perceive that the 2022 would be normally part of the budget process anyways. And operationally to establish extra councils, that's part of your procedural bylaw. So I can see them being separated without impacting, but that's just my perspective.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I'd like to leave my motion stand then, Mr. Mayor.
So that would mean we can entertain a further motion after we deal with years 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we have the motion. We're back to you, Scott. You seconded, but you wanted some friendly amendment. Are you willing to?
No,
I think Mark
I
seconded.
seconded it, Bill, and I'm
I'm
fine
sorry.
the way it is.
I'm sorry, Mark, my fault. You're happy the way it is, right?
Yep.
Okay. So is there any other discussion on this then? Does anyone need to rehear the motion? And I'll call the question again. It is a recorded vote. Scott?
Yay.
Pat?
Yay.
Mark?
Yay.
Larry?
Yay.
Yay. That's carried unanimously. Scott, did you have another motion you want us to consider?
Yeah, obviously everyone's heard me speak before. I'd like to introduce a motion that we have a mandatory review, starting almost immediately. So I guess my motion would be mandatory review prior to the 2022 year, and that it include the representation, committee be set and include representation from the water users.
Seconder?
I'll second Bill if nobody else does.
I saw Larry's hand. Thank you. Any discussion?
I actually have a question.
Yes.
Should we put in, it concerns me when we say for 2022 budget, that even though we're saying start sooner, we might not get final results till next October or November, which would put us in the same position again. Can we ask for a report to be brought forward to keep us in the loop within 3 months? Just to find out where we're heading?
3 months might be pretty optimistic.
Even 5 months. I don't want us to be at the end of the year struggling with the same issue.
Larry?
I would recommend that, we do a mandatory review, but we start the committee immediately in February 21. so that
My-
discussions can start immediately. I mean, it's irrelevant, we can look at it in whatever date it is, but start discussing how we're going to solve the problem immediately.
I assume that from the motion.
All right. Any further discussion? I'll call the question on Scott's motion. All in favor, Scott,
Yay.
Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry.
Yay.
I vote yay. Carried unanimously again. So thank you, council. That was a good discussion. I mean, I agree with what Mark said before. It's a terrible decision. I'll make a slight apologies to Gary for some of our confusion. I know that there's numbers of members of council who have been under the impression that once these water rates are set, they're locked in for a 5-year period. I know we were under that impression. I'd be remiss if I thought that there were other members of council who believed as I do that once we had those rates set, we weren't allowed to look at them at budget time. So that's part of the reason for our confusion today. So.
And that's a fair comment, Mr. Mayor. That's why I drew to your attention that the words where they refer to it as a living document, which means it must be considered from year to year.
Right. Thank you for that. So are we complete with this section of the agenda? Any input from staff?
Mayor Kane, the only comments I have is just obviously we will undertake to have water representation. So similar to perhaps to the Environment Committee, we would put something on the website to invite people to participate, and then we'd be able to come back to council.
Yes.
So I know there are water users for example, in Camborne that may be interested in what the discussions as well. And so we'd be looking for a general representation call to assist in formation.
Yes. And to Larry's point, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to get this up and running by February. I think that's overly. I just don't know that we can do it that quickly. We have to get, like you said, the message out. We have to get some volunteers in. So, if we got this going by March, I think we'll be doing very well.
Through you, McCain, we're certainly going to try and get it started and respond and deal with the issue and bring it back to council and have that discussion. But I will give you some feedback on how long that's going to take as a follow-up.
Can we bring it to corporate in a couple of weeks so that we can get some, through the minutes, get some information out to members of council?
I commit to that. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're on to section 7, public hearings and meetings. I believe there are none. Planning bylaws, none. We're looking at the adoption of the council meetings and the committee of the whole meetings. So look for, where are we here? Minutes of the regular council meeting. We have
This
some.
is November.
Yeah, this is November's meetings. And we have some.
Do we not have one in December?
I think we've already approved this in the last meeting, did we not?
Mayor Kane, it's Kate speaking.
Yes, Kate. Is it because of the
Okay.
amendment?
We realized after the November minutes were adopted by council that the motion resolution 2020-287 that dealt with the replacement and installation of the communication tower at the office did not include where the funding was to come from. And the treasurer has asked that we go back to those minutes, to that particular resolution, and add, and further that council authorizes the expenditure from the general reserve for the completion of this project, and
Yes.
then go back in and re-adopt those November minutes.
Okay, thank you. You only highlighted that for me so I wouldn't miss it. I'm sorry. Pat,
I will make that motion.
thank you.
My hand was originally up to ask if it's sometime in the not too distant future, we might be able to have 5 minutes.
Okay, let me have a quick look at this. Yeah. Well, we can do that soon as we finish this, and then we'll just take a
Thank
quick.
you.
Yep, if you need a break, you need a break. You're seconding, Larry? Thank you. Is there any discussion? Call the question then, passing the minutes with the amendment. Scott,
Yay.
Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry,
Yay.
and I vote yay. So that motion is carried. We have a request for a quick break at 2:43. Could we start again by no later than 2:50? That gives you 7 minutes.
That's plenty.
Thank you. So we're on recess until 2:50. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, sorry, I'm back online, but
Hey,
I can't start my video up because I'm just got so little power here that I'm just worried I'll lose you again. So I'm just going to go without video, but I'll stay online this way, if that's okay.
that's great, Mark. Thanks. We can hear you loudly and clearly.
Thank
So
you.
it's 2:50. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. And we're at 9.2 section of the agenda. Looking for a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes of the regular council meeting held December 15th.
I'll move.
Thank you, and seconded by Larry. Call the question. All in favor, Scott,
Yay.
Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry.
Yay.
I vote yay. Motion's carried. 9.3, looking for a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held January 12th, 2021.
I'll move.
Thank
Pat.
you. Seconded by Larry. If there are no questions, no questions about that meeting. I'll call the question. All in favor? Scott,
Yay.
Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry,
Yay.
Bill, yay. Business arising from the minutes. Anybody, council? I hear none. Moving to committee reports, we have none. Public Works and Infrastructure, there is no report. Rec and Facilities, we're looking at report PNR 2021-01, the Community Paramedic Care Program. We have a recommendation requires action. It's recommended that the Council of Township of Hamblin acts as follows. The council authorizes manager of parks and facilities to coordinate with the Newfoundland paramedics to provide the community paramedicine program service within the township facilities. Mover Larry, seconded by Scott. Any discussion? Yes, Larry?
I just wanted to say what a fabulous idea this is. It's something that we desperately need. And I know that the physicians recruitment has been talking about this in some time, and this is a great way of being able to move that forward. And I want to say that help came from the CCHT, or the citizens group, to direct this to the right people. So thank you to them for helping out on that.
Good. Did you have a hand, Pat?
No.
No, okay, I'm
good.
sorry. Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Larry. That this is driven by obviously the county paramedics, but they are really getting into community medicine. They're making stops at Transition House. They're making stops at Cornerstone. They're making stops in the rural areas and doing all kinds of community paramedicine that's preventing people from having to go to the hospital for simple things, blood pressure checks, diabetes checks. It's a tremendous program that they have coming forward. So I'm 100% with you. So we have a motion on the floor. I'm going to call the question. All in favor, Scott?
Yay.
Pat?
Yay.
Mark?
Yay.
Larry?
Yay.
Bill? Yay. Motion is carried. Thank you. 14, Corporate Services, report T2020-22, which was deferred from the December 15th, 2020 council meeting. Are you stepping in here, Arthur?
Do you, Mr. Mayor?
I believe, yes, I believe Ms. Rett's online here.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nazir.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for 2021-04, which is the revised version of 2020-0, sorry, 2020, I don't have that in front of me, 2020-22. In terms of the motion, Mr. Mayor, I would like we're recommending that council receive this report, and I would like to pull the second part of the motion because council just approved the rate for the water. However, I do need council to approve the motion that states that council approves the water rate study to be updated with the approved water rate, which will be the basis for the water financial plan application and submitted to the province.
So I tried to write that down, but I didn't quite manage it. Is anybody willing to move what Nazareth said?
I will. Pat?
Thank you,
I'll
Pat.
second,
Pat,
I'll
you're-
second Mark.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Is there any discussion? I believe we understand what we're voting for. Is there any questions about what we're doing here? Everybody understands what the ask is of us? Okay. I'll call the question then. All in favor, Scott,
Yay.
Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry,
Yay.
and I'm yay. Motion's carried. Thank you. So are we at 14 point? Yeah, I just lost my screen. Number 14.2. The regulation and restriction of the dog bylaw and the appeal body. So this recommendation requires action. It's recommended the Council of the Township of Hamilton acts as follows. Report CD 2021-01 regarding the Joint Animal Control Municipal Services Board be received. 2, the council approves the Joint Animal Municipal Services Board to act as the appeal body for appeals in order to orders to restrain issued in the Township of Hamilton. And 3, that the revised bylaw be brought forward for council adoption.
I'll make that motion, Pat.
Thank you. Seconded by Larry. Is there any discussion on this? Yes. Sorry, Scott, do you have discussion? No? Oh, so it's all you.
I'll just vote yay.
We get ready to vote. I'm sorry. Okay, Scott's yay. Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry,
Yay.
and I vote yay. Motion's carried. Thank you all. Emergency reports, there are none. Communications and announcements. We have an email from Debbie Francis, read the current cannabis regime in need of a urgent and significant change. So we've all had this, we've all seen this letter in our correspondence. Are we looking for a motion to accept for information, or are we looking for a resolution to support? Yes, Larry?
I think we should look for a resolution to support. The more we say about this issue, the better. And just a question, did anybody sign the petition? Tomorrow's the last day.
Okay. Is it online?
Yes, it's
Okay.
within the content of the letter.
Okay. I just didn't.
I've signed it.
I did hit the icon. Okay, thank you. I'll go back. So we have a mover to we have a move to, excuse me, to pass a resolution to support. Have a seconder?
I will second, but I have a
Thank you.
question.
Yes.
It says that regarding the resolution or regulations from October and November, have we already supported this exactly as it stands?
I know we've supported a couple, but I don't believe we supported this one exactly as it stands. I could be wrong though. Staff can help, or Larry, do you have information?
I think Arthur had indicated that we had supported this before,
Okay.
but not this specific one. I could be wrong.
Mayor Kane
Yes.
and members of council, in the attachments to this particular item, I've included Debbie Francis' letter, the letter that the mayor and the MPP signed that went to the health minister. And then there's a page that shows all of the support resolutions that we've done in October and November with respect to cannabis production and the regulations and the enforcement. And those are just the ones that we've done lately. So that shows, and it does include Norfolk County, where Ms. France has her petition.
Okay, thank you for that. I was under the impression that this was her sort of a last ditch effort to try to get one petition that had everybody together rather than separate resolutions coming in from municipalities at various times. That's only the impression I got from reading it.
Because sorry, because
Yes.
she's a resident, she's not, her letter is not coming to our municipality as a resolution from another municipality. Her letter is coming to us as a private individual. So it's coming from a different area, but she's encouraging everyone in her letter to go online and sign the petition for the MP in her area to present.
So are you basically telling us that we don't need this resolution? We need to just simply get online and sign on as individual members of council?
You can do the sign on online. And if you want to support the information that you've received and her letter, then I can forward all of that. Then that gives me direction to forward all of that to her.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. So then thanks for the question, Pat. So is there anything else to discuss on this before we vote? Okay, call the question then. Scott,
Okay,
Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry,
Yay.
I vote yay. The motion is carried. Thank you. 16.2, Gravel Watch Ontario on the Rocks. We need a motion to receive this for information.
Mayor Kane, I would make a motion to receive all the communication announcements for communication, if you so
Okay, and
wish.
then if you want, then we can withdraw anything that you specifically want to discuss.
Sure.
Okay, that's a great idea, Mark. Anyone want a second to receive all this information, and we'll simply withdraw things. Okay, Larry, all in favor, Scott?
yay.
Yay. Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry,
Yay.
and I vote yay. So now they will ask then for members of council, anything beginning at 16.2 that you want to take out for discussion and support. Yes, Larry?
I'd like to identify 16.6, the Thrive Northumberland, that we pass a resolution to support and acknowledge the great work that these people are doing.
Okay. We have a seconder for that? Thank you, Scott.
Second.
Any further discussion on it? So I'll call the question. All in favor, Scott?
Yay.
Pat?
Yay.
Mark?
Yay.
Larry?
Yay.
Bill? Yay. Motion is carried. Can you up my screen, please, so I can get past 16.5, Emily? Thank you very much. Anything else on that we want to take out?
Well, the other one was, if I could, is 16.14 is the resolution Town of Lincoln supporting funding for local groups and service clubs. I think that's an important issue. We should be trying to support that. There are a number of nonprofit service groups that are really finding it difficult during these times. So if we could have a resolution to support that resolution from, I think it's Lincoln, Town of Lincoln.
You're moving
And
that.
Township of,
Do we have a seconder for it?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Pat. I agree with you, Larry. I can think of several groups within our own community. Fishability, even the Legion, the Lions Club. There's a number of them whose economy's been thrown for a complete loop. You know, I think maybe they've slipped through the cracks. So I do support this very much. Anyone else? Discussion? Call the question then. Scott,
Yay.
Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry,
yay.
Bill, yay. The motion's carried. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like
Yes.
to bring forward 16.13. We previously made motions saying that we were going to support initiatives regarding climate change. And I'd like to see this one supported so that we're following through on our mandate.
Seconder, Larry, any discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Scott,
Yay.
Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry,
Yay.
yay. Motion's carried. Anything further on section 16 of our agenda? Thank you, council. 17, bylaws. 17.1, a mover and a seconder to pass bylaw 20-2021-02, which is our borrowing bylaw.
Scott will move.
Moved by Scott and seconded by Larry. Any discussion? Do you need me to read the bylaw? You've all read it. Okay, I'm just going to call the vote. Scott,
Yay.
Scott,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry,
Yay.
and Bill votes yay. The motion is carried. Thank you. 17.2, bylaw 2021-03, the interim tax bylaw. Again, we've had this in our minutes. I prefer if I did not have to read this entire.
Oh, I'll move it, Mayor Kane.
Thank you, Mark.
I'll
Second,
second it. Bill,
Thank you.
Scott here.
all in favor of that? Scott,
Yay.
Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry,
Yay.
Bill votes yay. Motion is carried. Thank you. 17.3, the regulating licensing running at large. This is bylaw 2021-04 to regulate dogs in Hamilton Township. Once again, had this package in our pre-read. There, if I could.
I'll move. Bill, Scott here.
Thank you.
I'll second Pat.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Scott, all in favor?
Yay.
Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry,
Yay.
and I vote yay. Motion is carried. Thank you. Excuse me. Notice of motions, we have none. I'm unaware if we have any media on the line with us, but I'll just give it a second or two in case someone has a question out there. I think that's sufficient for us to say that there are no media present. Could move on, please. We have no closed section today. So obviously no report from that. Brings us to notices required by notice bylaw, and we have none. So we're at section 23.1, bylaw 2021-06, a confirmatory regular council to pass the meeting of the regular council of January the 19th. I have a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Scott. Seconder.
I'll second.
Okay, I saw Larry's hand. All in favor? Call the question. Scott,
Yay.
Pat,
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry.
Yay.
I vote yay. The motion's carried. Thanks again. And that brings us to Scott's motion to adjourn. A second.
I'll do it.
Thank you, Larry. All in favor? Scott,
Yay.
Yay.
Mark,
Yay.
Larry,
Yay.
and Bill votes yay. Thank you, members of council. I was, other than that one section was very bumpy today. We're a long way from finished with it, but at least we've made some strides forward. I want to thank you for the consideration, the amount of effort you put into thought, the way you expressed yourselves. Thank you very much for that. I have to run out to the municipal office, believe it or not, so I'm going to beg out of here. Thank you once again, and stay safe out there.
Thank you and
Thanks.
goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.